What would you do if the animal you rely on for everything, transportation, farming, even war, used to be smaller than your pet dog? Sounds impossible, right? But it's true. And the story of how that tiny creature became the powerful horse we know today, and how ancient humans turned it into one of the most important partnerships in human history, is honestly one of the wildest transformations you'll ever hear. Stay till the end, because the last part of this story will completely change how you think about ancient humans, and maybe even about your own relationship with animals. So let's start with the shocking part. The very first horse-like creature to ever exist on Earth wasn't a horse at all. Not the way we picture one. It was a tiny animal about the size of a small dog, with soft paw-like toes instead of hooves, quietly wandering through dense prehistoric forest. Scientists call this creature Eohippus, which literally means dawn horse. And if you saw one walking past you today, you probably wouldn't even guess it was related to horses at all. Now imagine this. Millions of years pass. The world around this tiny creature starts changing dramatically. Thick forests slowly give way to wide open grasslands. And that shift changed everything. In a forest, being small and quick between trees was an advantage. But out on the open plains, there was nowhere to hide. Speed became survival. So generation after generation, this small forest animal kept adapting. Its legs grew longer, its body grew bigger, and most incredibly, its soft toes gradually transformed into a single, hard hoof, perfectly built for running fast and far across open land. Think about that for a second. It took millions of years of pure survival pressure to turn a small forest creature into the fast, powerful animal we now call a horse. This wasn't planned. This wasn't designed. This was raw, relentless evolution, shaped entirely by the need to survive. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, because horses weren't just evolving on their own in isolation. Eventually they crossed paths with something that would change their future forever. Us, ancient humans. Now picture this scene. You're an early human walking across a vast windswept grassland thousands of years ago. In the distance, you spot a herd of wild horses, grazing peacefully, alert, fast, and honestly a little intimidating. At this point in history, these animals aren't friends. They aren't tools. They're just another wild creature roaming the land, and to early humans, they were mainly seen as a source of food. That's right. For a huge stretch of history, horses weren't ridden. They were hunted. Ancient humans tracked wild horse herds for meat, using the same hunting strategies they used on other large animals. Spears, group tactics, and patience. If you told an early hunter that one day humans would be riding those very animals into battle, plowing fields with them, or racing them for entertainment, they probably would have laughed at you or thought you were insane. So what changed? How did horses go from prey to partner? This is where things get really fascinating. Somewhere around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, in the vast grassy plains of Central Asia, something remarkable happened. Ancient humans didn't just hunt horses anymore. They started living alongside them, watching them, studying their behavior, and slowly, carefully, they began doing something no one had ever done before. They started taming them. Now imagine trying to do this yourself. No manuals, no trainers, no internet tutorials. Just you standing in front of a powerful, wild animal capable of kicking hard enough to seriously injure or even kill you, and somehow trying to build trust with it. This wasn't a quick process. This took patience, courage, and probably a whole lot of trial and error, with plenty of close calls along the way. Early humans likely started small, maybe raising young foals born in captivity, animals that grew up around humans from birth and became more comfortable with them naturally. Over time, through careful breeding and handling, humans began selecting horses that were calmer, more cooperative, and easier to control. Generation after generation, these traits were passed down, slowly shaping wild horses into animals that could actually work alongside humans. And once that trust was built, everything changed. Literally everything. Think about what a horse actually gave ancient humans. Before horses, if you wanted to travel somewhere, you walked. Simple as that. Trading goods with a village 100 miles away could take weeks. Hunting large animals across vast distances meant exhausting chases on foot. But with a horse, suddenly you could travel faster and farther than any human had ever moved before in history. It wasn't just a new tool. It was basically the ancient world's version of upgrading from walking to inventing the car. And speaking of dramatic changes, here's a detail that completely shifts how you should think about ancient warfare. Once humans figured out how to ride horses effectively, and eventually how to combine horses with wheeled vehicles, warfare transformed instantly. Imagine facing an enemy army entirely on foot, when suddenly a wave of horse-mounted warriors appears on the horizon, moving faster than anything you've ever seen a human move before. It must have been absolutely terrifying. Horses didn't just change transportation. They changed the entire balance of power between ancient civilizations. But here's something people often overlook. Horses weren't just tools for speed and war. They completely transformed daily life too. Farmers who once relied purely on human labor could now use horses to pull plows, dramatically increasing how much land they could farm and how much food they could produce. More food meant larger populations. Larger populations meant bigger, more complex societies. In a very real sense, the domestication of horses helped shape the growth of entire civilizations. Now here's a wild twist that might surprise you. As horses became more valuable to ancient societies, they didn't just stay in Central Asia. Domesticated horses began spreading outward, traded, gifted, and carried along ancient trade routes to distant lands. Entire cultures on opposite sides of the world eventually built their identities, economies, and even their military power around these animals that had started out as small, timid forest creatures millions of years earlier. And here's the part that really puts everything into perspective. Some ancient civilizations valued horses so deeply that they were buried alongside powerful leaders, treated almost like companions rather than property. Elaborate horse burials have been discovered by archaeologists, sometimes with decorated harnesses, ornate equipment, and clear signs of deep respect. This wasn't just about function anymore. Horses had become something closer to partners, even symbols of status, loyalty, and power. So let's zoom out and put this entire journey together, because when you look at the full picture, it's honestly mind-blowing. A tiny, dog-sized forest creature slowly evolved over millions of years into a fast, powerful grassland animal. Ancient humans hunted that animal for food for thousands of years before ever considering it could be anything more. Then, through patience, courage, and careful observation, humans transformed a wild, dangerous creature into a trusted partner. That partnership then reshaped transportation, revolutionized warfare, boosted farming and food production, and ultimately helped shape the rise of entire civilizations across the ancient world. None of that happened overnight. None of that was guaranteed. Every step of that transformation came from real people taking real risks, working with an animal that could easily have hurt or killed them, simply because they saw potential where others might have only seen danger. And here's the part that should really stick with you. We often think of ancient humans as simple people, just trying to survive day to day. But the story of the horse proves something much deeper. Ancient humans weren't just surviving, they were constantly looking for ways to build stronger, faster, better lives, even when that meant approaching one of the most intimidating creatures on the plains and trying to earn its trust. That same instinct, the drive to build partnerships, to turn potential danger into powerful cooperation, to see possibility where others see only risk, isn't just ancient history. It's still very much alive in humans today, in the way we build relationships, form partnerships, and constantly search for better ways to move forward together. So the next time you see a horse, whether in a field, a movie, or even just a photo, remember this. That animal represents one of the longest, most incredible partnerships in human history. A partnership that started with fear and distance, and eventually turned into trust, power, and progress. And honestly, that journey from distance to trust, from danger to partnership, might be one of the most human stories of all.